All right, so welcome back. So we're going through the stages of automating the marketing and sales. So in this video, I'm going through the agent web framework. So this is something that is taken a lot of consideration, a lot of thought. Um, Now the reason why is that RPA has been around. There's a few fairly good frameworks out there, UiPath, Microsoft's, etc. like that. So there, this is a major part because now we're trying to get artificial intelligence to act like human. Now we have websites interacting with the websites, discovering information about a website, and being able to perform the action. So this is where we kind of get involved. So first, let's talk about the options. We have the commercial options. As I mentioned, UI Flow, Power Automate, all good tools, but I didn't find them feasible, mainly because of the reason I know Power Automate has some very good technology, but on the other hand, it's the ability to extend those tools in a very specific way. So um, for me, this was going to be limited in what they can actually do. So let's look at the other tools that I looked at. Puppeteer and Playwright, these are frameworks that seem to be built around Selenium WebDriver. Definitely probably focus more on testing, but good tools nevertheless. So, I think both of them were feasible. The next one is called Siculex. This is a very interesting tool because this is based more on UI automation, works on character recognition, image recognition. So instead of having to, in saying where the element is on a page, you can provide an image or provide text and say find this on the page. The biggest one right now is Selenium WebDriver, which is the most popular, I would say, for RPA and automation, especially with websites that require on-site visual aspects, because backend drivers will get the web page, but with a lot of the elements like Vue and Angular, etc., are rendering at real time and possibly not rendering elements until they're visible in frame. So having some type of WebDriver, being able to control elements within a standard browser was something that I considered very important and critical. PyWin Automate. So this is actually automating instead of automating the web browser, automating the actual Windows operation or Linux operation. So you're able to move around windows, you're able to click on elements. So rather than treating the web browser really like HTML, you're treating it more like a visual component. And the last one I added in was OpenCV. OpenCV is really an image tool, and it's CQLix is using OpenCV to do the image recognition. So my thinking was that it has its own syntax and format, so it's probably better to start looking at OpenCV directly because we can update the models, we can change the models, we can read in other models from TensorFlow. So treating a website as a visual recognition process rather than just a HTML element aspect. So there's a lot of challenges when we're considering how we're going to automate the bots. First, AI bots are going to get more popular, and they probably are already. There's a lot of work trying to identify fake accounts or bot accounts and things like that. So as this challenge increases, the bots need to be more human. So I think things like web drivers and stuff in the future are going to be very difficult to fool websites. So, having that is creating more challenging, and it's going to lead to bot detection. It's going to get more aggressive, and we can see that there's quite a few bot detection systems out there. So we're talking about how do we interact with websites, social media, more like a human would than a bot would. So right now, a bot will go to a specific location, but what if we had the bot moving the mouse more like a human or typing at different rates and things like that. So these kind of concepts are going to appear more and more, and we're going to be looking at, we need to think about that in the future as our challenge goes forwards. I think I mentioned Vue, like websites like Vue, React. This is going to make things like XPath and other selectors harder and harder to use. There's less IDs, less elements, magic divs, i.e. basically rendering a div or not rendering a div just to screw up someone's XPath. So this is going to happen. I have seen that in some websites already. Not very common, but exists, and just trying to change how that works. I think that's going to be seen quite a lot. Image-based websites or similar exist. So, we're talking about websites which have a lot of images, like using an image to move around, to create the buttons, to do other aspects. So less about the HTML, more about the image. So we have quite a few image standards now on websites, and let's say you had websites that were socially media, and I think I've seen this in Airbnb and other things where they render the text as an image rather than text. So this is something to consider, that these are going to be challenges in the future, and we need to simulate human movement. So I think that's very common. Make mistakes, click the wrong buttons, click some items, not navigate rather than necessarily typing in navigations and things like that. So the reason I'm talking about these challenges is because we need to think about this moving forward. So it's not necessarily something we have to solve today, but we need a framework that can handle more and more of these challenges. So what is the solution? I'm using a custom command language, spelled custom wrong there, but creating my own command language means the ability to swap technologies when I need to. So there are a lot of command languages, and this is nothing new. I'm looking at something very basic, click, location, things like that. Ability to use optical character recognition, OCR. So ability to say go click on this button because this button has a text on it, or image recognition, which is like go click on this button because it looks like this, like it might be an icon button or something. Ability to change and learn from selectors, and mutate to a full Windows process. So what I'm talking about there is the system can be set up using the standard selection methods. Select this button, this is the class, this is the name, so we can find the selectors. And then if the technology changes, and I had this happen a bit, like the class names changes, IDs change, the structure changes, so the selectors will break over time. But if we have image recognition, we can fall back to image recognition and say, oh, this selector doesn't work anymore, but we know what the button looks like. So we can use image recognition to identify a button. And that will then later move on to using a full window process automation. So instead of building drivers into your browser, it's then taking them out and controlling it completely through opening the browser like a human would, moving the window around externally, and then talking to the system. And then capitalizing on the existing technology for now and evolving the bots to be future-proof. So I have worked on a lot of bots in the past for different purposes, but it's a pain to maintain them. So we're looking at a way to go beyond maintenance and start looking at where they can discover. So let's dive into that a little bit more. So the way I'm structuring my command is we have a command group. So a command group could be something like post on Facebook, maybe our group. So create a post on Facebook might be our command group. So the command group will have input, so we might pass a text, an image, and some type of variable name. It may have outputs as well. So a command may be simply performing an action, or it may be collecting information. So we have a series of abilities to do these things. Within a command group, we have a list of actions. So the action maybe go to, maybe click, write, double click, collect, cognition, condition, and execute. So execute being functional execution. And then how to get to the element. So command action might have a selector, XPath, optical character recognition, or image recognition elements to it. And then we have conditions. So we have something like an OR condition. So let's say if something failed, I've seen this in some websites where they're A/B testing. So we try one strategy, it fails, then we can try a different strategy. So maybe they've changed the post button, or now it says, it's in Spanish rather than English, or whatever it is, where we can start creating the conditions. And then we have our condition list, or we have a subgroup. So in the conditions where it's an if statement, so if something has happened, then follow this path of logic. So for example, our create post, if we look at some social media, creating a post with text and image, the image has to exist at a certain time. So we might have if image exists, then we're going to process the image upload, for example. And each of those subgroups would have the input, output, and it would have the associated variables. So this way, we're creating reusable commands. So our commands are less about how the automation works and more about what we want to achieve within them. So rather than having to write this all down in functions and code, I wanted the ability to create something where we could swap out from using like a WebDriver to visual recognition form things. But we don't need to do that from day one. We just need to have the ability to change over time. So some of the things I put in here was cognition. So this would be something like a standalone language model. So for example, if we want to use cognition in our data collection, we could essentially ask a question. So let's say we have a profile, it's about HubSpot, and we could say, is this person a HubSpot marketer? Is this person a HubSpot consultant? Is this person blah, blah, blah? So we can be asking the language model to make conscious decisions, which belongs to that agent itself. So that agent then autonomously can make decisions about the data that it's seeing in the RPA. Collection, this is the ability to collect information. The OR, I think we talked about, alternate actions if we're doing subgroups. So on the right, we can see that we have our agent, our command execution, and this is broken down into two paths. So our first path is our follow the instruction commands. So we find an element to do an action. So let's say we want to create a post. We're going to find the element where we do a post. We hash the action or use the name, so we can uniquely identify what action it is. We highlight the element, so we can use JavaScript injection, create a border, red border, whatever. Then we can take a screenshot. So before we actually do a command like fill in the text, we're going to identify the command. We take a screenshot, and then we crop down the element, and we save that element for optical character recognition later, and then we perform the command. So an example would be, let's type in hello world into a prompt. Then we would highlight the prompt, take a photo, crop it, save it, type in the text. So why am I doing this? Well, when the element starts to fail, let's say the website gets updated, then we don't have to fail. Our agents don't have to fail. They just need to get smarter, which means, oh, okay, we can't find the element anymore. Are we on the right page? So first we can compare our complete screenshot with the page, saying, yes, are we on the right page, or are we on an error page? What's happening? Can we resolve this, or can we continue? So we can start doing that. Next, we can use the optical character recognition to identify the location on the web page, where our image is. So that's something that is very useful for identifying. Um, and then we can do things like using that image recognition, find the pixels, then move the mouse to that location and click the button. So we kind of have two paths here. We got the path, the traditional path using the WebDriver, and we have our artificial intelligence path, which is starting to get smarter about communicating to the website. And the last thing I talk about is the discovery. So if we understand the purpose of the action, we don't even necessarily need to code how the action works. So I this works, but I was experimenting with ChatGPT. I just took a random image off the internet and I said identify where I need to click to publish a post. And you can see that it drew me a red box around that and it was off. It looks like it started its coordinates from the logo, not the size of the screenshot, and it failed here. But the thing was that it was able to discover things. So instead of just saying, find this text on the page, I asked it, where do I click to write a post? Maybe that was the wrong statement because it highlighted published a post, and you can see the red is off a line, where it probably should have highlighted the share an article, photo, or upload. So we can see that that's not quite perfect, but you can see that's a great start. So we could use the discovery in the automation as well. So you could read, you can use the existing knowledge about different social media, in this case LinkedIn, how to navigate through the website, how do I click to the homepage, where do I click to share a button, and then it's able to generate its own. So as long as we can generate the stages, in theory, we should be able to generate the actions that go with it. But then we have some ambiguity, which is we need the AI to be able to not only identify actionable areas, we need to know where it's relevant to. So that is something that can be discovered by saying, oh, this person wrote a comment, I want to respond to this person because the comment box will show on many posts and not just one. So we need to identify which comment we want and where to comment to. So that is what we're focusing on. So the ability to create agents which are autonomous, which are interacting with the website, which use cognition, which can not only just read information from text, but understand it in some manner, being able to ask challenge it questions. If this is relevant to what we're looking at, if it's not relevant, as well as being able to create text. Oh, someone wrote this, how do I respond to a comment? How do I like an action? How do I start building up that information, as well as discovering information, like building up profiles around people, who they're related to, and their activities. So having an agent that acts like a human is key to how this operates, and being able to future-proof it as well. So what I didn't really discuss was the environment of the agent in terms of finding objectives, the scheduler. So we want it to act like a human. So it's not doing actions in parallel for one agent. We're just representing one person with one agent. So we want the agents to act like a single person, localized memory. So we're viewing each agent as having their own localized memory. So if I've read something, if I've seen posts, if I've done some action in the past, it doesn't need to be necessarily long-term memory, but short-term memory. So actions can be done. So agents have a state. Agents can forget, can stop, and pick up later. So if I'm searching for people with certain profiles, and I did the search on Monday, and I want to do it next week on Monday, then I don't necessarily need to start from the beginning. I can try to find where I was up to and skip a whole bunch of pages and not necessarily begin from scratch. So having local memory allows us to be a lot more efficient with the agent that rather than starting at one every single time. And cognition, which was the ability to write text, respond, and conversation. So the concept, even though I won't get into it here, but the agents are following a intelligent agent, a bigger agent, which is coming up with a strategy. So the strategy will be identify people, XYZ, write comments in their network, and then the agents themselves will use that knowledge to perform that action, but they have like a mini brain, so they don't have to go back to the main agent to ask, well, how do I write this text? Instead, they can just go ahead and say, okay, write responses to people that are uh, HubSpot consultants talking about HubSpot, write a comment. Fine. With a positive tone or whatever, with this call to action, fine. That agent has enough information to make its own cognition and being able to respond to that person in the right place and time. But as I said, all these are out of scope for this discussion, and we're going to look at those further. So in conclusion, so this is, we're going to start out with the commands. We're using the web drivers. We're going to move to OCR, and we're going to experiment with PyWin, OCR and PyWin Automate to start acting really more like human. This will involve creating or using existing models to move the mouse like human, which is probably, and typing more like a human rather than what you would expect from a bot. And as I said, I think with all the challenges, we really need to future-proof that concept of being a human, that the AI is being a human, and we don't want to see it as superhuman or accessing 1,000 profiles in 10 seconds or something. We have to find the right balance so we keep a certain level of quality, a human nature quality, to the automated AI marketing and sales bots. So that's all I have, and I hope you find it interesting.